This is David Dubal, and it's my privilege to have as my guest on this program 27-year-old Israeli-born pianist Uriel Tsachor. He is a pianist making a reputation worldwide. He has been everywhere recently, and I have been very interested in his new EMI release of Beethoven sonatas as well as the Eroica variations. We won't have time to hear the Eroica variations, but we will hear a Beethoven sonata. Uriel, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you, and I'm honored to be here.
Thank you. We're going to, I think, paint a portrait of you for our audience. We're going to discuss your career, what you're doing, and your hopes. We have a good program. We have a live performance, I believe, of the Arabesque of Schumann. We have Undine of Ravel, the Beethoven Sonata, and the second movement of the Brahms B-flat Concerto. And that's most interesting because that recording came about because of your entrance in the Queen Elizabeth competition. Now, that is supposed to be one of the great musical events, and as a competition, one of the most grueling. Tell me about it, and you were one of the prize winners, and we have this B-flat concerto that we will hear later in the program. But first, tell me about this extraordinary moment in your life, which really began your recording world, right?
It began actually everything for me, both concerts and recordings. The competition itself is really difficult in the fact that it lasts for more than 1 month.
1 month you were in Brussels?
Yes, just for the competition.
Mm.
And beside the fact that when I entered the competition there were 122 participants and only 24 go to the second round. The real hard thing about the competition is that we have to learn during 1 week a newly composed concerto that is written specifically for this competition
by a Belgian composer.
And we have to learn it during 1 week and then play it live at the same time with the concerto the competitor chose, in my case the Brahms B-flat, and another solo piece in between them, and the jury chose out of my program the Scarborough out of Gospodin and We. So this is really hard in both ways, that you have to learn and you have the pressure of time learning a difficult and rather long concerto. It was about 25 minutes long.
And who's the composer?
It was De Vries, a very prominent Belgian composer.
Mm-hmm.
And
is it true they practically lock you up?
It is true. You are confined with the other 11 laureates of the competition for 1 week, and you have to eat with them, and you have your own room, but you really hear all the time everything that's going on the other pianos practiced on, and it really drives me crazy.
Tell me, how did you feel after the end of that week? Did you really learn the concerto well?
Besides having to play it, I was the world premiere player of this concerto. I was the first one to go on stage and play it. So this was the extra pressure for me that the jury never heard it before, and I had to play it.
What a pressure. And a tremendous audience comes to those events there.
Yeah, about 3,000 people.
Wow. So you were literally confined to a cell, so to speak, learning this concerto in manuscript, right?
In manuscript. You had to memorize most of it because it was quite hard. But you could use the music if you needed to.
Tell me, would you ever put yourself through such a grueling thing again? Isn't that almost crazy?
It is very crazy, but now all that I have all the benefits of it, I really thank it. But it was really one of the moments in my life that I was really depressed.
10 days of sheer depression, right?
Yeah.
And yet, you can't really say you were depressed, Uriel, because you did it.
Yeah, I did it. But the feeling is that usually when you go on stage and you want to play, you want to do your best. Either it's a competition or a concert. I just want to do it, and that's it.
And this also went against your nature, so to speak, because you were telling me once that you don't like to learn fast. You
No.
like to savor and so forth.
Yeah, this tradition comes to me from my great teacher in Tel Aviv, Mindra Katz, who, among other things, taught me that music should be learned real slow. Just, it's like a nourishment that you have to have for a long time in small portions to really get into the piece. And that's why this case with the Queen Elizabeth concerto was against my nature.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I understand that. And I know you well enough to know that you're a real trooper, though, and even though you were depressed, you were not about not to learn that. You did it.
I had to do it.
And of course, as you said, the benefits reaped were wonderful. Not only the recording of the Brahms B flat with the National Orchestra of Belgium, which we will hear a little later in the program, but you also received an EMI recording contract, and later this year, your disc of Clara Schumann works will be out.
Yeah.
How did you choose Clara Schumann? I know you do not always like to play just the standard literature. Is that how it happened?
Well, that was one part of it, and another part of it was just by coincidence. I was taking a class at Juilliard where we had to choose a subject to write on. And just a day before that class, I just found somewhere in New York in a store a Clara Schumann piece that looked really interesting. And then I decided to write this paper on. And as a result, I had to play through the music, and I really loved it. And because she is really not appreciated up to her level, because it's not that she was a minor composer. She just was a minor figure near her husband. I wouldn't say she was as genius as he was, but she really had some real originality in her works, and which really attracted me because they were new kind of originality.
I can't wait to hear that recording, by the way, and I know that it will be out later in the year. Which brings me to the fact that our first piece will be by Clara Schumann-Wieck's husband, Robert Schumann. Now, it really is rather tragic. They got married. She was a young woman. He was 30. And she never really had a chance again to compose. Many of her works are early works. And she became the wife and the mother
of 6 children.
Of 6 or 7 children. And there was only one piano, so she always relinquished her own practicing for Robert's composing. Then when he died at the age of 46 only, she, for the next 45 years, supported the family, went on tours, and of course became one of the major forces in interpretation. Yeah. So I'm so pleased that you are bringing these works to light.
I have to mention that not of them are really great, but I would say definitely that 7 or 8 of them are real more than good music written for the piano.
Yes, and we have to get out of this idea that there's only music that's great.
Yeah.
In fact, we learn to appreciate greater music by understanding the music around it that was composed. Not quite as wonderful, but wonderful enough, certainly, that it's not neglected.
We have to remember that not only Beethoven and Mozart exist. I know that I had this problem a few years ago, that I really wanted to play only Schubert, Mozart, Beethoven, and I would never dreamt to play the Saint-Saëns second concerto like I will do next year. And I really learned to, and I'm pleased now that I can play the Grieg and Franck and things like that, concertos that are really great just because the enjoyment, which I'm sure Beethoven and Mozart meant to put in the music, and not to make out of it what I wouldn't say everybody tries, but music should be enjoyed, not just revered.
Exactly. Well put. And also, you have told me that you want to keep these great masterpieces refreshed. You don't want to have to constantly be working on these high mountain peaks.
Sure, it's impossible. It's inhumane to work only on pieces like the Brahms concerto, things like that. For me, I had to work on them a long time to be able to play them. But I wouldn't like to play them every year or even every 2 years, because it really demands too much out of you, and it's so difficult both mentally, emotionally, and technically that you can't deal with those only with those.
I know you have added the Brahms D minor now, the number 1, to your repertoire.
Yeah.
Will you be playing that soon?
I'm not sure. I might be playing with the Jerusalem Symphony Orchestra
Uh-huh.
that, but I don't know as yet.
My guest is Uriel Tsachor, Israeli-born pianist, and he is touring everywhere at this time, and he's making quite a reputation, and we are going to hear him now in Schumann's gorgeous arabesque from a performance that he did in Brussels, I believe.
Yeah.
You have just heard a beautiful performance of Schumann's celebrated arabesque. My guest is Uriel Tsachor, Israeli pianist who was born where?
In Bombay,
In
India.
Bombay, India.
Of all the places in the world. My parents were working there. My father is a civil engineer, and he was sent by the Israeli government for some kind of project. And that was that. I was born.
So you then went to Tel Aviv at what age?
I was 2 years old, so I can't really remember anything.
And then when did you come to your love, which is the piano?
Oh, I didn't know it's my real love till I was about 16, which is rather late.
But you had started before.
Yeah, and I started at the age of 7. I stopped for 2 years. And then I really started seriously about practicing again about the age of 14. And then when I went to study with Mindru Katz, it was about 17. I really started being a professional, or really taking it as my serious love in my life.
Really. Let's talk then a little bit more about this extraordinary pianist, Mindru Katz, who was not very well known in the United States, but was really one of the most expressive and beautiful artists playing the piano. He had a deep effect on you, and I can hear it in your playing.
Yeah, he gave me the right to be original without destroying the norms people expect from a performance, but just be as free as you can. And beside the fact that he knew all the really deep and great secrets of producing a wonderful tone on the piano, which I really consider myself lucky to be under his arm at that time, because I also felt at this time that that's what I needed, kind of spiritual guidance, not just a teacher, but a real guide.
Mm-hmm.
And he was my great influence on my playing, that I would definitely say.
Mindru Katz was a Romanian-born pianist who studied with the same teacher that Dinu Lopati worked with, and then came to Israel, of course, because of, circumstance.
He defected, yeah.
Yeah, and he has recorded many, many things. His foray is beautiful, and of course that sound.
That's the main thing about him. You can recognize it from, far away. You hear just one tone. That's him, for me at least.
It's amazing. Well, my guest is Uriel Tsachor, and he studied with Mindru Katz in Tel Aviv, and we're trying to paint a portrait now of my guest, and we have him born in Bombay, and he moved to Tel Aviv, and he is now studied with Katz. And then what happened? Because Katz died in 1978.
Yeah, and then I finished the academy the 4th year with a student of his, Immanuel Krasovsky, who was also a student of Madame Anya Dorfman at the Juilliard School. So that was my connection to the school, and at his recommendation, I came here to New York to study with her.
Yes, and you admired her immensely.
Yeah, I did. I really did. She was completely different tradition that I really discovered. And I don't think I really absorbed it, but I used many facets of her style, that's for sure.
So you came to, you're an absorber. I mean, you assimilate whatever you need. I have, found that out in just knowing you for several years. Uriel, you then you came to New York, and you were Tel Aviv is what? How many? 2 million people?
Oh no, it's
800,000.
Yeah, about.
That's right. Do you like New York?
Oh, in a certain way, I adore New York. You can do anything, especially in our field, the music. I was really overwhelmed by the amount of events that I could go to, and I really learned a lot from them. The first 2 years that I was here, I was really practically going 4 or 5 times a week to a concert.
Did you know English already in
Israel? In Israel we learned English for about 12 years. So
such an advantage. In America we learn very little about foreign language.
It was improved since then, but I had a fairly well knowledge of English.
We're going to now interrupt our discussion about your career, and we're going to hear from your very recent EMI recording, which is not released in the United States yet, but it will be. It contains the great Eroica variations and 2 Beethoven sonatas in E minor opus 90 and a beautiful 2-movement sonata in F sharp major, which Beethoven loved, didn't he?
Yeah, it was his favorite sonata.
Beethoven actually said, "This is my favorite sonata." It's in 2 movements, it's 10 minutes long, and it's going to now be played from Uriel Tsachor's new recording on EMI, the sonata in F sharp major, opus 78. You have just heard the wonderful two-movement sonata number 24 in F sharp major, opus 78 by, of course, it's Beethoven. The artist who was my guest, and I am talking to him on this program, the Israeli-born virtuoso Uriel Tsachor. And right after this message, or perhaps two, I don't know, we will be back with more discussion about Uriel Tsachor's career, aspirations, and we will hear one of the great pieces in the piano literature, Undine. This is David Dubal, my guest on this program, Uriel Tsachor. Uriel, if I don't pronounce your name absolutely perfectly, forgive me.
That's fine.
Uriel, we have heard you in Beethoven, and I know that Beethoven is an important composer in your life, as Schumann is and as Schubert is. But I didn't, for some reason, I don't know why, associate you with Ravel. Tell me your experience with Ravel.
The thing is that I haven't played Ravel for quite a while because I was concentrating on pieces that I needed to play, that someone told me to play.
Mm-hmm.
And I really love Ravel, and I play quite a few of his pieces. I don't play his concerti. And I feel that Ravel is a special composer for me because I play the piano when I play Ravel. Because when you play other composer, you must or want to associate it with chamber orchestra or chamber group, or an orchestra trying to imitate the human voice, trying to imitate something else. Either you want to, or it's based upon things like that. When you play Ravel, you play the piano, and you're just playing what imagination or what imaginary scenes Ravel put into music through the piano, and that's why I love to play Ravel.
He certainly was, at his time in history, the last word in pianism.
Oh yes, some of the pieces are almost unplayable, and you really have to take a great deal of work to master them.
We're going to hear you now, Uriel Tsachor, in a work that really is nothing less than an impressionist miracle.
That's true.
Ondine from Gaspard de la Nuit. Can you ever get bored working on something like this?
Never.
It's
Really.
liquid poetry, Alfred
And
Cortot said.
Yeah, and you always have to work on that. It's never good enough.
And as pianistic as it is, it really doesn't fit, does it?
No.
It's not really for the human hand. It's for an idealized hand.
That's true. Whenever you play Ravel, even the easier Ravel, you always feel that you are a little bit out of control. And I think he might have meant it to be like that. And if you feel like that, I think it's okay.
It's an interesting statement, because I think Ravel was attuned and aware to everything and every note he did and every action of the finger.
That's true.
An amazing mind. Stravinsky once put him down by saying he was a Swiss clockmaker, but in many ways that's a fantastic compliment also.
I would say so.
Yeah. Let's hear Uriel Tsachor in the great Ondine by Ravel. You have just heard one of the gorgeous pieces in the literature of the piano, Undine by Ravel. The pianist, my guest, Uriel Tsachor. And right after this message, we will have more of his performances. This is David Dubal, and it's a privilege to be talking to the Israeli pianist Uriel Tsachor. We have been painting a portrait of this young artist, and he has been doing so many things. Last season, he played with the Israel Philharmonic, and I know that you were recently in Jerusalem, and part of your recital was dedicated to a big piano sonata by a young composer. I think he's an Israeli composer living in New York, Ran Yedidia. Ran Yedidia. Tell me about that piece and how you came to it.
Well, I came to it as Ron was composing it, and I really, passed with him the stages of composing it. I was seeing the germs and then the structure being developed, and then the whole thing. And pianistically, it's one of the most difficult things ever written, but it makes sense. It's not just difficult. It's one of the most expressive pieces written during the last, I would say, in the 20th century even. For me.
Really?
It's real expressive. It's so personal and deep for me that I really just had the urge to play it. That was my feeling towards it.
And tell me, Jerusalem is a fairly conservative city musically. How did this go over? A new piano sonata world premiere, right?
It was world premiered, but the thing is it was world premiered on a live broadcast radio transmission, so it wasn't really only for Jerusalem, and that's why we did it. And the Israeli Broadcasting Authority wanted it because they liked the idea of having a new piece that no one played.
It's fantastic. Ran Yedidia. Uriel, can you spell the composer's name?
Yeah, the last name is Yedidyah. Yedidia.
Well, I think it's incredibly commendable in an age when, unfortunately, too many pianists neglect the living composer. So I'm certainly glad that you played that, and I hope to hear it soon.
It was a pleasure.
I know that we have discussed several things, and I know you studied in Israel with Mindru Katz, and we talked about your studies with Anya Dorfman, but you've also admired your teacher Joseph Kallichstein very much.
He is a wonderful teacher in the sense that he is a performer, and he understands the creative thing that the performers want to do on the spur of the moments, and he welcomes it. And, he just likes when a student is original, and, he's having fun with music, and that's what I like about it.
I understand that. Well, Kallichstein is a wonderful person. He has such great humor.
Oh, yeah.
He's a wonderful, wonderful artist. We're going to hear a composer very dear to you, and it's going to be the second movement of the Brahms Second Piano Concerto, one of the monster works in the literature, isn't it?
It is, for sure.
4 movements.
Yeah, but the longest ones.
Very long. It's like a 50-minute work, and Brahms was always very, very ironic about his own piano works. He said 4 little piano pieces.
Yeah.
And
wispy short scherzo.
Yes, he says, and this is a tiny, tiny wisp of a scherzo of the second movement, which is Allegro Appassionato. We're going to hear you play. This was one of the works that you played in the celebrated Queen Elizabeth competition a couple of years ago, and we're going to hear the second movement. We don't have time for 50 minutes of the second piano concerto's G minor movement.
D minor.
In D minor.
D minor movement.
And it's with the National Orchestra of Belgium, and the conductor is who?
Georges Octors.
Georges Octors. Here we go, and the artist, my guest tonight, Uriel Tsachor. the mighty second movement of the Brahms B-flat, which Brahms called a tiny, tiny wisp of a scherzo. The National Orchestra of Belgium under George Achtors, and the soloist, the man I am talking to on this program, Uriel Tsachor, Israeli pianist, and indeed this recording comes from the Queen Elizabeth competition where he was one of the prize winners. Uriel Tsachor, you'll now be leaving to be playing in other parts of the world, not America, but I know you'll be back in September, and it was wonderful talking to you.
It was a pleasure. I feel honored.
This is David Dubal. Thank you for listening.